Hi guys, I wanted to play a video that I recorded. So I'm going to be with you on the chat while this is going. Hi Cece.
Okay, the Kids Cannot Consent White Paper, Part 2.
Can you hear that, Cece?
Okay, so Part 1 was me reading the white paper, the way it was written. And I found that I think there's a little bit of a language barrier between what I read and what Serge reads. So Part 2 is rereading the document in Serge speak. I even got my head. I don't have a headband. I don't have a sweatband, especially not a neon one, but I've got a pretty headband that I could put on. So, okay, here we go. This is in Serge speak. Last night, I saw a lady pulling a child into the Church of Scientology, the cult of Scientology, the cartel of Scientology. Kids cannot consent. My purpose in writing this is to leave you with one resounding thought, not on my watch. This ends today. What I'm about to share is happening right now in your community, in your state, across this nation and around the world. I have listened to the grown children, my friends, who have endured these atrocities, and their cries of pain are unmistakable. The horrifying systemic abuse they've suffered goes beyond anything Epstein or Nassar could have conceived. Now, as survivors, they are standing united in declaring, no more, not one more generation will endure this. These crimes are so grotesque, so shocking, that at times they seem unfathomable. They are real. They must be brought into the light. We, as a society, can no longer turn a blind eye. We must act now to protect the innocence of our children before it's too late. In what world is harming innocent children and leaving them to rot in their own minds until they pass away from this earth an acceptable thing? The Church of Scientology, the cult of Scientology, was founded by L. Ron Hubbard, a convicted felon in France for fraud. He died a lonely and miserable death in 1986. After L. Ron Hubbard passed away, David Miscavige took over as chairman of the board. They call him COB. The church operates as a religious entity, but it's structured through over 50 interwoven 501c3 organizations, creating a maze of corporations deliberately designed to confuse and obscure. The church, the cult, lost its tax-exempt status for 23 years, only regaining it after relentless lawsuits, harassment, and intimidation of IRS members. In truth, the organization functions more like a multi-level marketing scheme, a Ponzi scheme, than a religious institution. Documentaries like Going Clear and Leah Remini's Aftermath have exposed much of this. Speaking of the aftermath, ex-Scientologists, namely Mike Rinder, who was the director of Office of Special Affairs, OSA, Claire Headley, the director of Religious Technology Center, Amy Scobie, she was the director of the INT base, Mark Pesch, he was the chief accountant, and Debbie Cook, a recruiter, were all executives that surrounded David Miscavige and were part and parcel to all the crimes against the children. They played a role in facilitating the abuse, covering up the abuse, or arranging for the abuser to be moved to a different location. Not one of these executives are innocent to the atrocities and should be held accountable alongside David Miscavige. Each and every one of them knew what was happening to children, along with all the Scientologists, including the parents of said children. Each and every one of them should go and they should sign the bottom of this document. They should take it to the FBI or their local police station, turn it in, and say, yes, I was abused. Yes, I was put in a hole. Yes, they made me do it. This was my job. But you know what? This is what I did as my job. Read this paper. Read this paper. This is what I did as my job. I abused children. I tortured children. I made them who they are. I abused them and I warped them. That was my job. Scientology has two overarching goals, and they failed at both of them. The first is to clear the planet. That means eradicating insanity, war, and crime while building a civilization rooted in sanity and peace. They've really failed that one because they are debating the existence of chaos and no peace. They believe that this can only be achieved by helping individuals rid themselves of personal aberrations and regaining their inherent goodness. The doctrine, policies, and practices of the so-called religion are structured around this mission. However, these very practices are abusive and harmful to the core and more aligned with clearing the bank account than clearing the planet. The second, more insidious goal is to eliminate psychiatry from the planet. To Scientologists, psychiatry is an abusive and destructive force. The church's policies, particularly those Dianetic courses, completely reject all forms of mental health diagnoses and treatment. Psychiatric medications are strictly forbidden. This dangerous belief system has resulted in multiple tragic deaths. Rest in peace, Lisa McPherson, Whitney Mills, and Philip Gale. Cancer is the leading cause of death among Scientologists and ex-Scientologists, closely followed by suicide. A disturbing trend rampant within the so-called church. Children, our poor children, are denied proper medical attention pertaining to any mental health diagnosis or treatment. Children are considered degraded beings. If mental health is at all considered, no pharmaceutical interventions are considered for any child. You have a headache? No Tylenol. You hurt? No Advil. You have ADHD? Nope, nothing for you. Because a convicted felon made that decision for you. A recent interaction with two youths went into an org to ask about the so-called church. The recruiter for the org spoke with the teens, found out that they were on ADHD medicine, and told them to quit taking their medicine. A non-medical person, and told them, and if they wanted to be considered for the church, stop taking your medicine. They were also instructed to go ahead and cut off your hands. The pain is simply in your mind. You can control your body with your thoughts. You're just like a robot. Scientology's methods, auditing, ethics handling, and courses are touted as essential and beneficial, but in fact are the mechanisms of abuse. These practices leave lasting physical, mental, and cognitive damage. Survivors often exhibit disabilities, both chronic and acute, stemming from these services. these paid services. Physical scars bear witness to some of these abuses, while emotional and cognitive injuries manifest as severe trauma. Crimes against children range from physical, mental, sexual abuse, rape, abandonment, torture, neglect, failure to thrive. Almost 100% of ex-Scientologists show signs of mental and cognitive impairments, including PTSD, severe anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, developmental delays, and stunted educational capacity. The Church offers these abusive services to all members regardless of their age. This includes babies as young as 1 day old. Age is no barrier in Scientology, not for auditing, not for ethics handling, not for courses. There's no age requirement really for staff recruitment or the Sea Org. And while executives, those same ones that abused our children and let abuse happen, claim that there are no children in the Sea Org, this is merely a game of semantics. Scientologists believe that children are merely grown thetans in small bodies, not children in need of protection. What about religious freedom? Why do we feel we need to take down this Goliath? The First Amendment protects religious freedom. I understand that. It's the same as the First Amendment of me being able to expose this cult. But we must challenge the misuse of that protection. Consider the example of Jehovah's Witnesses who believe they can refuse blood transfusions on religious grounds. While adults can make that choice for themselves and the children, the courts have examined these closely. Now shift your thinking. What if the parent or the church were poisoning a child, and that's why they needed the blood transfusions in the first place? Complete abuse. Or picture a religion that allows the handling of poisonous serpents. Is it a religious freedom if a parent places a child in the MF middle of a box of vipers? Would that still be religious freedom, or is it child abuse? One more analogy. Imagine parents signing away their children's rights to become volunteer ministers for 1 billion years. They are subjected to slave labor to pay off exorbitant church service fees. Cult service fees. Families and children are uprooted and moved wherever the cult deems necessary. Is this religious freedom, or is this a gross violation of human rights and an atrocity against our children? That is why we must act. That is why we must act as quick AF. A cry for justice. There's over 200 individuals, my friends, those I grew up with, that have come forward, alleging abuse and trafficking within Scientology. Their experiences, while diverse, share a common thread: the organization's toxic practices that have led to widespread exploitation and harm. These victims, now adults, my friends, carry the scars of physical abuse, mental torture, sexual exploitation, trafficking, and more. Many, rest in peace, have attempted suicide, a testament to the profound trauma they've endured. This investigation is focused on the children within Scientology, as they are the particularly vulnerable. The young victims are trapped within the organization's insular world. They have endured unimaginable suffering. Their stories echo a chilling refrain. I wish somebody had noticed. I wish someone had spoken up. And I prayed that someone would have saved me. Children today, not just in the past, are being tortured, held hostage, abused, mentally and physically raped, figuratively and literally. Children are being coerced into lying or groomed, not to see the abuse as abnormal. Children today are crying for a savior to remove them from the monster's awful grip. Scientology's doctrine and practices create the environment ripe for this abuse. Children, including infants, are subjected to auditing sessions that can be emotionally and physically harmful. These sessions often involve one-on-one interactions with adults in closed rooms with no oversight. Imagine a grown person, a grown-ass adult with a child. The child may not leave the session until they have a win. They're held hostage. A child must hold the cans until the session is over, sometimes hours. Oops, your needle is not floating. You must stay and hold those cans until it does. Unlawful detainment. Children are locked into the rooms with adults. No supervision. Adults get comfortable in their clothing, sometimes unzipping their pants or taking off bras. Sexual abuse. Children must know what the words mean, even if it's sexually explicit. Sexual exploitation. Children must show they know the meaning of the words, and they have to demonstrate it on dolls or clay models. Sexual role-playing. Out of that 200, there are a few that have come forward for this paper. I want to name a few. These are my friends, and one is me. Surge. 1. Abandoned, raped, coerced, trafficked, mentally abused, physically neglected, denied education, and disconnected from their family. Surge 2. Physically abused, neglected, abandoned, mentally tortured, homeless, denied education, and disconnected from family. Elizabeth. Physically abused, abandoned, mentally tortured, raped, forced to give up a child, unlawfully detained, trafficked, and disconnected from family. Jamie. Physically abused, mentally abused, severely neglected, denied education, coerced, and disconnected from family. Nora. Physically abused, mentally abused, unlawfully detained, raped, and disconnected from family. Jane 1. Physically abused, sexually abused, mentally abused, unlawfully detained, abandoned, denied education, homeless, and disconnected. Miriam. Physically abused, sexually abused, mentally abused, denied education, trafficked, and disconnected from family. Scientologists employ a sophisticated grooming process for the youth, for the kids. The process is to manipulate children and prevent them from speaking out. They are told that their negative experiences are the result of their own choices or past lives, and that seeking help outside the organization is forbidden. It is a high crime to report another Scientologist to each other or to the authorities. This grooming is instilled from birth. This conditioning can make it extremely difficult for victims to escape or to seek justice at any age. Child trafficking is a hidden bondage. It's not merely physical confinement. It is an insidious form of exploitation that strips kids of their personal liberty through coercion, fraud, and manipulation. This definition is crucial and legal for understanding the myriad ways in which children, especially foreign minors, are ensnared, in a web of exploitation that often evades traditional law enforcement. Children who are deprived of their liberty by others with the intent to obtain forced labor or services are victims of child trafficking. Scientology has been accused of perpetuating a form of child trafficking under the guise of spiritual rehabilitation. Children are often relocated within or across borders for auditing or coursework, ostensibly to further their spiritual development. However, these extended stays can involve forced labor and servitude disguised as discipline or spiritual rehabilitation. Historically, children as young as toddlers were exploited as laborers in Scientology. Even children as young as 9 were subjected to arduous tasks, such as auditing other children or grown-ass adults. These auditing sessions, which would last for hours, involved probing questions about personal experiences, including crimes, sexual practices, and perceived perversions. The goal was to extract a win from the individual being audited. The scope of human trafficking within Scientology extends beyond children. This practice is particularly prevalent in recent years, with individuals being brought into the United States from Mexico and Europe. There's an urgent need for action. The testimonies of all these victims demand immediate attention and action. Scientology's harmful practices must be exposed, and the organization must be held accountable for its crimes. It is imperative to protect our vulnerable children within Scientology. Authorities need to provide them with protection, support, and resources they need to heal and rebuild their lives. Parents, you had one job: to protect your child, to grow your child. Parents, both those in Scientology and ex-Scientologists, need to take accountability for what they have done to their children. Parents need to assume and be accountable for the role they play in handing their children over to the abusive doctrines, policies, and practices of the so-called religion. Parents, you need to sign the bottom of this document, take it to your local law enforcement or the FBI, and show them what either they went through, are going through, and what they did to their children. They need to take accountability for doing this to your children, to your child. And it's really admirable now if you're an ex-Scientologist and you've escaped and you've got your child out of it, or you escaped and you never put your child into it because you knew the abuse that was happening. You knew as a parent what it was going to do to your child, or what it was doing to your child. You knew. It's time to be accountable for that. It is time to blow, not just go AWOL, not to have a blow drill to figure out where other people are going, but it's time to blow the lid off from this abusive cult. That's what it's time to blow. Scientology is such an abusive psychological warfare. And I understand, I know, they try and put the weight of the planet on you, discuss financial ruin you're going to have, give you an identity crisis, and promote social isolation if you try and leave. But the prison of belief is so strong. Parents, you just need to take your accountability and take your place in history of making this right. There's more to read on the audits and ethics. I want to read to you some of the questions. This is why this is so horrible. This abusive, family dividing cult. Are you a pervert? Are you guilty of any major crimes in this lifetime? Have you been sent here knowingly to injure Scientology? Are you or have you ever been a communist? Are you closely affiliated to any person or organization violently opposed to L. Ron Hubbard or Scientology? Here are some crime questions. I, as an auditor, need to take accountability for asking these crime questions and not reporting them. Have you ever embezzled money? Have you ever been a drug addict? Have you ever bombed anything? Have you ever murdered anyone? Have you ever raped anyone? Have you ever had anything to do with the baby farm? Do you collect sexual objects? Do you have a secret you're afraid I'll find out? Are you upset about this security check? Have you ever had unkind thoughts about L. Ron Hubbard? Do you hope you won't be found out? Do you think there's anything wrong with having your privacy invaded? What do you wish you hadn't done? Are you upset by this security check? For children, what has somebody told you not to tell? Have you ever decided you didn't like some member of your family? Have you ever taken something belonging to somebody else and never given it back? Have you ever pretended to be sick? Did you come to Earth for evil purposes? Have you ever smothered a baby? Have you ever enslaved a population? Have you ever destroyed a culture? Have you ever torn out somebody's tongue? Have you ever eaten a human body? Sick AF. Sick MFer. People, sign your name to the bottom of this. Even if you don't have children, you knew what was going on with those auditing sessions, with the ethics handling, with the courses. You knew. If you don't have children, you knew what was going on with other children. You knew what you were put up to do. Were you a person that just hauled paperwork back and forth for Kendrick Moxon? Were you a course room supervisor that had to hold people hostage in unlawful detainment? Go to the authorities. It's time. It's time to blow the lid off from this cult.
Okay, what did you guys think? That's just part of it. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of resources, a lot of videos, a lot of laws that are resourced. I thought I would throw this out there. It's kind of being read the way Serge would read it. I did a part 1 where I read it and it was a little dry. So I thought, I need to read it the way Serge would read it. Crazy helped me with some of it. Thank you, Crazy, if you're still on. Uh-oh, did I lose everybody? Did I lose the internet? I hate it when that happens. Okay. There aren't many people on. I think everybody's still on with Nora, or they're on with Poe. One of the two. That's okay. I wanted to put this on here. As I said, I'm going to put the full document. Cajun Juju, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's taken me probably 3 or 4 weeks to write the whole thing. There's about 12 pages worth, 13 pages worth, and it's definitely, oh good, I'm glad. She had some strong things to say, which I'm glad she got it off her chest. But I'm going to PDF it. I've got some names. I don't know if Crazy, if you're still in here, I'll text you to make sure it's okay to put your name on the bottom of it. And share it out. Share what you want off from it. This is a white paper for use. You can take what you need, take the laws, take the videos, take any of the words, use them. But I do ask if you're going to use them or if you're going to share it out. Keep the names that help me put this together on the bottom so that way they get the credit. Of course, who gets the credit gets the blame too, right? But let's make sure credit is due. And if you want to add your name, if somebody knows somebody that has Acrobat, I don't have Acrobat anymore for the PDF, but if you know somebody that maybe wants to take control over adding names, add your names to the bottom of this. Let's make it an hour paperwork. I'm cool with that. Just don't erase anybody's name. So thanks for joining me for that. I will put it on GitHub. And as I said, I'll post the link in the description. Cajun Juju, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Minnie. I'm sorry for making you in your feels too. I love you guys, and I'm going to stop streaming and go do what I said I'm going to do. I'll put it on GitHub and put it in the description. Thank you. Bye.